Well, we're a little bit after 12 o'clock. Let's get started. What do you guys, everybody thumbs up with that? By the way, you can on your Zoom, there's reactions on the bottom. So I'm going to give a thumbs up right now. You'll see my thumbs up. You can also wave your hand if you're trying to get our attention. And we welcome all of you. We have a couple coaches on the call that are part of our team. I'm Carl Diffendorfer, and I'm the owner of Higher Impact. And today is all about providing value to you. And so we're a coaching company, consulting company. We have clients all over the country, and we're here to help people through this time as much as we can. And many of you know me on this call, so you know that we're already doing that. And in that, we said, man, who could we get on the call that would actually help answer some of the questions that we don't know? And James has been sending out these email blasts that have just a plethora of information. And so I thought, man, I should ask James if he'd be willing to get on the call, provide some value, and help all of you kind of navigate these waters. And so one of the things to note, though, is we're going to be doing a lot of these. We had our first one on Monday, and they're going to be each Monday and Wednesday. And the goal is connection, inspiration, and education. So every time you're on the call, you should get that. If you don't get it, and you're like, man, that was a waste of my time, let me know, because we're going to be tweaking this and making it better. And we are open to critique. We're not going to cry ourselves to sleep at night. And so we welcome all of you. And how about we get started? Everybody good with that? Very good. By the way, before I do that, Susan Davis is on the call with me. And Susan, wave, I don't know if everybody can see you, but she is in charge of business development for Higher Impact. And so she is part of our coaching team, but she's also just a very connected, very knows a lot from all of her years in business. And so she is going to be helping to facilitate the call today. We have a list of questions together. I see some of you are already posting questions in the chat. That's great. And we're going to just start asking these questions and let James talk. And as you have more questions, throw them into the chat and we'll make sure we try to get to them. So first question, James, and I'm going to pin your video here as soon as we get started. So you're going to be front and center, James, okay? And by the way, everybody, we're streaming this to Facebook Live, so you can share it to your friends later and watch it again later if you'd like to. James, first question is, what are the programs that are available right now to the business? And help us understand there's so many different things available. What's available right now?
So, and first and foremost, thanks to everybody for getting on the call. You're definitely, you're building my ego here. So it's, I'm very appreciative though of everybody tuning in. And the thing I want to start off.
Why don't you introduce yourself too?
James Sanders. I'm an attorney, a business attorney here in York, Pennsylvania. I'm with MPL Law Firm. We provide a variety of different legal services there, but the majority of our clients look to us for either business or organizational types of work. Organizational being municipalities and other type of governmental entities. My focus is primarily on general counsel work and transactional work, so buying and selling assets or other businesses. Give you a little background about myself, and I'll be done real quick. I didn't grow up in a per se law firm. I spent a lot of years. I was on Wall Street for 8 of the first 10 years of my career as an equity analyst, following industrial companies and multi-industry companies. I spent 2 years in corporate strategy with ITT in their fluid handling business. So essentially doing what I was doing on the street, but for one of the companies in my sector. And then ultimately, I ended up moving back to York and taking over a family business, and bought my parents out and had that. And I bought another one and had 2 of those from 2010 till 2017. And then started the practice of law part-time while I still owned the businesses. And once I sold them both, I rolled into it full-time. So I just want to give you a little perspective on how I think through things and what I'm looking at. I tell people a lot that I provide legal advice with a business owner mindset, and that's because most of my career has been spent either analyzing businesses or running them myself. So anyway, long story short, you're asking me about programs that are available to small businesses, nonprofits, and organizations. So the two that you're hearing the most often right now are what referred to as the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program loans, and then the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. They're both backed by the SBA through the Department of Treasury. The EIDL you actually apply for right online, and the PPP, which I'm sure most of you are either have submitted or in the process of submitting, you submit to SBA approved lending institutions. Other than that, there are state grant programs. Here in Pennsylvania, we had the Working Capital Assistance Program, which was about $60 million, up to $100,000 per business. That got exhausted pretty quickly. New Jersey, I know, has a similar program. North Carolina has a list of low interest lenders they're working with. New York, I believe, has a working capital program as well. What I would recommend is you look at your individual state sites and figure it out from there. But going back to the two main programs that I referenced, the PPP program is, and as the name says, it's payroll protection. So what you're applying for there is 2.5 times what your average monthly payroll was either during calendar 2019 or for the 12 months prior to February 15th of this year. You're applying for 2.5 times because there are forgiveness provisions within that loan, which you can apply to be forgiven on the loan for up to 8 weeks of eligible payroll costs and some mortgage or utility or rent costs. The split there has to be 75-25. In other words, 75% of whatever you pay in those first 8 weeks has to be payroll eligible, and then the other 25% can be in the mortgage, rent, or utility range. The other program is the EIDL, which was passed during the Families First Coronavirus Act. That was that second bill that was passed by Congress. Under that program, you can borrow up to $2 million for for-profit businesses, get a maximum loan rate of 3.75%, and nonprofits get a maximum rate of about 2.75%. The term on that loan is up to, the maturities can go up to 30 years. And that is primarily for short-term business expenses. You cannot use it to refinance long-term debt. It must be used for the short-term operations of the business. The big question I get related to the two is, can I apply for both? And the answer is yes, you can apply for both. But if you've already gotten the EIDL, it must be disclosed on your PPP application, and then they get refinanced under the PPP. There's a lot of nuances to it, and I'd be happy to get into it, but I think I would probably be talking and your head would be spinning with all the details. So those are the two main loan programs. The other thing that is popping up as well, everybody hears about the tax credit that you could be eligible for. And this was passed under, I believe it was the CARES Act. So you can get up to 50% of your payroll applied as a tax credit for your business. Now, this is, if you don't have any other loans, this is available to you. Businesses that are eligible for this have to, in a quarter, be down 50% from the prior year's quarter. And the max payroll that applies to is $10,000. So the math works out to about a $5,000 cap per employee. There's a couple of other nuances, but the three programs that you're essentially looking at right now, outside of state grants and any industry-related help, are the EIDL, the Payroll Protection Program, and the tax credits for businesses right now. I'm sure there are other little things and nuances that you can get involved with, But those are the hot ones that I'd be looking at right now if I were you.
Okay, so how do we know which ones are right for us then?
It's really going to be contingent upon a lot of different factors. But so for the payroll protection program, essentially you're looking at what's defined as a small business in the SBA, and I can send out a link on how you define that. And that's typically looking at what your revenues are, what your profits are, and you know how you sit in the industry. What they're trying to do is not get one-man shops that are private equity firms that have a lot of different businesses rolled up and applying for SBA loans. But the PPP is for businesses that have 500 or fewer employees. There are exceptions to that. Essentially, think of hospitality and restaurant chains and franchises. If you have the NICS code, if you have a 72 in front of yourself, and that's hospitality and restaurant, you don't have to roll all of your different locations into one application. You can apply for each location. The PPP is a good short-term bridge the gap. It's a low-interest 2-year 1% loan. Most people are going after that. I would highly recommend it because it's applicable not just to people with W-2 employees, but it's also applicable to sole proprietors, partners, and business owners. The EIDL, again, if you're looking more for working capital needs, that might be where you want to apply for something. Again, if you find that you don't fit into the PPP spectrum, the EIDL is another option that, again, will be a longer term loan, still low interest at 3.75% for profit entities. But again, it's just another add-on. The tax credit, again, I'm looking at that more as a fallback provision. If you find that you don't apply or aren't able to get either the PPP or the EIDL credit. Which one's right for which industry? I mean, honestly, Carl, I wish I had a good answer for you. They all came under different provisions of each bill that was passed, and there wasn't a ton of thought going into them by our elected politicians. And that's not a political statement that I'm making there. It's just they were trying to fire the money out as quickly as possible, and that's the way that they were brought into play.
James, a couple of the questions that Carl and I have gotten with dealing with different clients over the past couple of weeks is they're looking at, do I apply for one of these, or when might it be better to just lay off employees? That's another question we've gotten. Can you talk to that?
I can, and you know, it's a conundrum. I put out an article the other day about the restaurant industry. I mean, they go and apply for one of these loans, right? Well, they can't open up. Let's say they get the loan next week. Well, what are they supposed to do? Bring back all their wait staff to do takeout? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense as to when you get the loan versus not getting the loan. Here's how I'm putting that out to my clients. I tell them that I would apply for the loan as soon as possible to get yourself in the system. I'm hearing, you know, they're trickling in about pre-approvals and preliminary approvals for some people in the local area, but that doesn't mean the money's in their account. I don't know when the money's going to come through. I don't even know what these loan documents are going to look like because things have been tweaked so much from traditional SBA loans. I recommend that people go into the system, apply for the PPP loan if that's the angle that they want to take, and then watch as we progress through these shutdowns, and perhaps maybe they start relieving the businesses that are essential versus non-essential, at least as it relates to the state of Pennsylvania. At least you're in the system and you've got the loan going, and even if you eventually do take on, let's say, the PPP loan, it's a 2-year 1% term on that loan. That is a very attractive amount of money to be sitting on your balance sheet at a low interest rate that if you find that you're not going to be able to bring employees back, there is no prepayment penalty on it. Just pay the loan back if you don't, and it costs you 1% to hold it onto your balance sheet to have as emergency funds in the interim. I'm not saying it's the best option, and I never advocate for businesses to take on debt that they don't need. But in this environment, we were all kind of caught somewhat flat-footed. And I know we were talking to clients at the tail end of last year. Start talking to your lenders. Start seeing if you can get personal guarantees taken off. Seeing if you can get your line of credit expanded. Now is the time to do it in a good and economic environment. Some did, but a lot didn't. And this is their best option as of right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. And I'll just offer one thing before we move on to the next question. From a banking perspective, I was in banking for 30 years, everybody. And when James says, make the application, do it quickly. I've talked to many of my banker peers that are still out there. They worked, I think the application became available Thursday or Friday of last week, not even a full week. They worked pretty much 24/7 over the weekend, because what you have to do is you make the application with the bank, who pre-quals before they send it to the SBA. So there's a lot of legwork from the bank first. They might need additional financials from you. But the good news is I'm hearing, so today's Wednesday, I started hearing yesterday of actual SBA approvals. So, I mean, to know that we're getting approvals, and it hasn't even been a week yet, but the bankers are going crazy. So try to have as much prepared, documented, and ready. That's only going to help you. I mean, that's honestly what I can say. Just be ready for your banker when you make application, and they are working night and day to get these through for you.
Yeah, and to that point,
that's
Susan,
a good point. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carl.
Right. One thing to note is that and James, please, if you disagree, let me know, but I would say start with your bank first and see if that's going to be the right way to apply. If they're too small and they don't support the PPP, then there are SBA lenders locally and other banks that are working with people. So yeah, make sure you start with your bank. That's probably going to be the best place to start. James, would you agree with that?
I would. In fact, if you haven't seen the news about Wells Fargo in the last couple of days, they had an asset cap imposed on them because of their issues. Their regulators said they could only have 1.3 trillion in assets under management. They came out and said the other day that we've already exhausted our $10 billion amount that we're going to do under this program. And the only applications we're taking are businesses with 50 employees or fewer, and they're going to be a secondary concern. So I got a lot of calls from a lot of very frustrated Wells Fargo clients that were looking for alternatives. I will say the banks locally, and I'm not advocating or telling you that these are much better than the others, but the banks I've heard locally that have approved are Mid-Penn, Orrstown, and York Traditions are three of the ones that I've heard where SBA approvals have come through.
I would absolutely agree with those three. Yeah.
Now, the other thing too is if you go through this application process and you get the pre-approval and you're coming up to the point in time where you're ready to sign off on the loan, and let's say everything comes back to normal, we don't need to sign for the money. You do not need to accept the funds at all. So, those are, there's a lot of different options, but start the application process now, because I'll tell you, in the state of Pennsylvania, the $60 million that the governor set aside, that was exhausted within a week. Mm-hmm. There was that many applications. I heard from another lending institution that last year they did 1,500 SBA loan applications. They're expecting 40,000 with the PPP program. So that just gives you an idea of the magnitude. Get going on it. Don't overthink it. Put the application in. If you're uncertain, we can talk, or your professional advisors can talk to you about it right before you sign on the dotted line.
So then to that point, or moving on from that, I should say, it's not really to that point, but moving on, the next question is, and I'm getting this one a lot too, how do I know what's included in payroll when doing the calculations? Yeah,
so it's a popular question, and it's something that it's changing on a daily basis. But the most recent guidance that I've received, it's your gross payroll. okay, if you have W-2 employees. It's your gross payroll that's sitting there that you would roll into your monies. The question I'm getting is, how do I handle independent contractors, and how do I handle distributions if I'm a partnership, or how do I handle paying myself if I'm a sole proprietor? I would say that the guidance from the SBA and the Department of Treasury is that they're being lenient on the documents they'll accept to prove your payroll. So you don't need to necessarily be submitting, or at least the SBA is not requiring the lenders to submit 940s and 941s, which are your quarterly payroll reports and year-end payroll reports. Although banks I've seen are requiring that of the people that are applying. I think they're trying to cover themselves. But as it relates to independent contractors, it's a little fuzzy because there's certain independent contractors that for all intents and purposes are employees of an organization, but they don't get paid that way. What I tell people that are asking me that question is, if that independent contractor is planning on applying for a PPP loan on their own, don't include them in your payroll. If they are not planning to do it, include it in your payroll. If you don't hear from somebody, include it in your payroll for the application purposes, and then you can figure that out once you get down the path of applying for the forgiveness portion of the loan, which would be 8 weeks later.
Okay. I have some good questions rolling in, everybody. By the way, for those of you that just joined, throw your questions in the chat box, and we're going to make sure if we don't answer them, we circle back around to them. James, you're doing great. This is great information. So how do we define ourselves as a small business?
So if you go to SBA.gov, there is a series of requirements for a small business. It's really determined by the amount of employees that you have, the size of your revenue, size of your profits. There's a number of different factors, but if you go to SBA.gov, it has a box in there, or a link, and I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat window, which will help you determine whether you are a small business or not.
Okay.
Per their standards.
Okay. All right. Good. Kind of circling back to the PPP, one of the questions was, isn't it forgiven if we follow the instructions, or how do we know if it's going to be forgiven or not?
So it would be forgiven. It's applicable to the first 8 weeks from the loan, the day you receive the funds. In those first 8 weeks, if let's say you get a $100,000 loan from the SBA, and let's say in the first 8 weeks, you're going to have $100,000 of payroll and mortgage commitments. What you need to do is submit your payroll records for those 8 weeks, and 75% of the loan proceeds that you have must be payroll related, and the other 25% can be for rent or mortgages. And
if we don't spend it, then that becomes a loan at that point.
Eventually rolls into a low interest 1% 2-year loan.
Okay.
He's coming for you, James. He's coming.
Well, we all understand. We're all working from home. I sequestered this room from my kids. So
I love it.
I thought I had those instructions too. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you're okay.
You know, I had mentioned, and I know there are a couple of questions in there too around that, and this might help that from a banking perspective, having done it for so long, wanting to be as prepared. Are there certain documents or reports that you would recommend that they review and prepare ahead of time, James, before they get to the bank or get to the online application? What can they prepare to be, have everything when they're making application?
Yeah, there's two main areas that I would take a look at. So if you have existing bank loans, I would make sure I'm comfortable with any covenants that are included within those bank loans. And when I say existing prior to applying for the current programs. Banks typically have provisions in there which say you have to maintain certain financial ratios when you have loans. They also have provisions in there that say that we will take this position, creditor position. They might even be secondary or take a third position to other loans or mortgages. So you want to make sure what your restrictions are on your loans. That being said, once you understand that, it's time to talk to one of your advisors, whether it's your attorney, accountant, or even your banker, and say, look, I'm going to apply for this. How are you going to be handling this, and what are you going to be doing to waive these covenants or adjust these covenants? I would be very careful with what they say and document everything.
Mhm.
Document, because they're going to tell you something on the phone, and that might not get approved by whoever their underwriting committee is, or whomever their risk manager is. The other areas that I would look at, again, if you have a lease or a mortgage, sometimes in the commercial setting, they have certain financial ratios that they're expecting their tenants or borrowers to uphold. When you go into the SBA lending realm, the SBA typically requires that they become the first position in any type of credit environment. So again, if you take on the SBA loan, you could be violating existing covenants in either your mortgage, your promissory note related to that mortgage, or any lending documents that you have. So make sure you're comfortable with all those documents.
James, I'll say too, one of the questions that popped up in chat was about a specific bank, about Citibank. And do we know anything, because they've been told that they're not up and running to take application yet. My 2 cents on that, again, I'm not an expert, but when James mentioned about Orrstown, Mid-Penn, York Traditions, what you have there, in my opinion, are local, regional, homegrown banks. And I have associates that I know at each one of those 3, which is why I agreed with James on that topic. They were quickly brought in locally for training Saturday and Sunday. And as James also said, things are changing hourly. So they're trying to be kept up to date on the process. And once they get the process, they have to execute the process. So I don't have any information about Citibank. I don't know, like a Wells Fargo, when they're going to be ready. But if you're waiting for them to be ready, you're spending your time when you could be applying at a local regional bank. That's my 2 cents. But I think you need to look local, because like I said, I know that York Traditions and Mid-Penn have already issued approvals. So if you haven't applied yet because your bank is a bigger bank and they can't get things going and they're not even ready to take application yet, I think you should look elsewhere. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. And then there's also SBA consultants out there, or SBA agents, and their whole job is to work with SBA approved lenders and get paperwork pushed into the system. So I would look to them as well to facilitate the process. But your first call should be whoever you bank with, because they all will have processes or procedures in place if they are SBA approved to get something going.
I just think with a local bank, I'm not saying they're not the right ones once they get the process, but because the smaller have less people to train and they're already moving with approvals, they can adjust quicker than the Wells, the Citibanks, B of A, some of those. That's why I think if you're not getting feedback from your main bank and it's a big bank like that, you might want to look at something smaller.
Yep.
Well, and to that, I mean, just one of the banks that I do know of that is working with people right now. Now that could change, and you would have to open an account with them, but Members First Federal Credit Union, I know, is working with people that do not have an account with them. And they are supposedly approving loans. They haven't approved mine yet, but so my bank did not work with this program. So I had to go to another bank that I have banked with and talk with them, and Members First is working with me on it. So
yep.
Yeah. So one of the other questions, and this was one of the questions I had for James, can the business owner be included in payroll? And so James, what's your findings on that?
Yes, I believe that they can be, if they're taking a distribution because they're a partnership, a draw in other words, or if they're an S election and they're getting a W-2, I would include them into the payroll costs. If you are, if you're a passive owner, it might get a little dicier, but again, we're going to find that out as we progress through the next, call it 30 days, which is the time for comment that Congress has on the final rules, or the regulators. It's really going to come into play when you request a forgiveness. So all I'm saying to you is, if you take distributions or draws from your business, or you're a W-2 employee, roll that into the amount that you're applying for. The worst that can happen to you is they deny the forgiveness amount.
Okay.
Can I ask a question along with that? I mean, it's the first question that was listed there, and it kind of answers a couple others. Would that be okay? It has to do
Go
with
ahead.
the cap.
I was just coming to that one. So, but go ahead, Josh.
Is that cool? Okay. So I was just looking under the figures and everything, because obviously I didn't want to fill it out wrong. I didn't want to incorporate my subcontractor's income, my payout to them and stuff like that, and then try to recoup that on mine. However, it does say in the application, it's limited to $100,000 per person of income. Therefore, my scenario was, say you have, two individuals with $150,000 of income, and say you have a lot of expenses beyond the $150,000 of income. So say there's 150,000 times 2, that's 300,000 of income. And then you have, say, $10 more $1,000 in the year of costs per person. So that would push it to, 320,000. With that $100,000, it's my understanding that the costs, it's purely capped at 100,000. No matter the number of costs and straight income, is it purely capped at $100,000 per individual?
Yes. So each 150,000, only the first 100,000.
Yes.
Be included. Okay. And you take that times 2.5 times.
Well, from my understanding, you divide it by 12 to everybody else who hasn't yet filled it out. I divided it by 12. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's the monthly. So for instance, say you have $100,000 or you make more than $100,000, the most you can apply for if you're an individual, and period per individual, the most you can apply for is $100,000. So you would have $100,000 divided by 12, which is 8,000 something, times 2.5, which is 23,000 or something like that, 22,000. Yep.
And it's the gross payroll, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
So that's to any of you who haven't yet filled it out. If you make over 100,000 and you're the only person, you have a very simple application process. You literally just do 100,000 divided by 12 times 2.5. That's what you're requesting for a loan for the PPP.
That's correct.
Yeah, good. So one of the questions we have in the chat, James, is it's a good question. It's a very simple question, but a very good question. So where do we find, what websites do we go to find all this information and keep up on it?
So SBA.gov has got plenty of information right on that site. And then the Department of Treasury actually will post that. I mean, those are the sources of the information that go out there. Now, you can go to pretty much any of your law firms, accounting shops, even investment advisory. SCORE has helpful resources. The SBDCs have helpful resources. They've all got things on there. All I can say is pick one or two, get comfortable with them, and just monitor it on a daily basis to see what's refreshing. One of those should be a government site. What's that?
And James, we could put people on your email list too. If anybody, yeah, he has a great email that goes out that gives tons of information and a daily update. If you want to be on it, throw your number or your email in the chat, and we'll make sure to get you on the list. So another one of the questions was from Matt Tennyson, and he wants to know about self-employed individuals. The Federal CARES Act will provide unemployment benefits to the self-employed, independent contractors, and gig workers. Okay, so where's your question? At this time, you should not file a claim through the existing online system or phone number if you're not currently eligible for the unemployment benefits. Can you speak to this? We've been waiting for this to become available. So Matt, I'm not sure completely on your question there. Can you comment to that so we know what you're asking? Matt, are you still there?
Sorry about that. I had to unmute.
Okay.
So yeah, basically, do you know, can you speak to what it is for, I'm a sole proprietor, commercial photographer. So I know that my assistant, who is a 1099er, has been waiting for this. She got word of it over a week ago. She checks daily. can you speak to what it is versus getting the PPP? Like,
Unemployment compensation you're referring to?
yes.
So what?
Or it's for self-employed. It just, yeah.
Well, April 10th is the date for the self-employed. That's when they can file. That's one thing, but I'm not sure that's what you're asking, Matt. I'm not sure I
Yeah,
understand
he's
the
asking,
question.
so this is the federal program, okay? And we're not sure yet because they have not provided the guidance, at least as of yesterday. I didn't check this morning. So there's a $600 per person payment, regardless of whether you're self-employed or a W-2 paid, in other words, paid into the system, that is coming through from the federal government. I don't know how that's going to work. Each state system operates independently of one another, and then they get information from the federal system. As of now, I'll just speak to Pennsylvania. We will. They have a notice on there that says we're awaiting further guidance from the federal government. So I don't have a lot of details for you, but you bring up a good point. Talking to unemployment compensation, and this in reality, you really got to look at what the max amount of benefit that's available per person in the state system, and then add $600 on top of that, and then they get up to 4 months of that amount. In Pennsylvania, if somebody goes on unemployment, I think it's $823 is the max payout that they can get on a weekly basis. You add $600 on top of that, the annualized number for somebody there is about $72,000. So if they were making $10, $15, $20 an hour, it's more advantageous for them to stay off payroll than come back on payroll. What I would say though to those people that are considering doing that and exhausting their unemployment resources, we came out of a real hot job market. I don't think you're coming back into the same hot job market. You really got to weigh whether you want those 4 months or if your former employer or new employer is saying, hey, we want to bring you on board. This is something that you should really consider and weigh the options there.
Does that help you, Matt?
Sure.
I'm asking if you're eligible as a single business owner. You are eligible for the 600. I don't believe you're eligible for the state money. How that's coming in your hands, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
And one of the other questions that was posted here, and then Susan has another question ready for us. Jeff Kruger asked, am I right that rent and utilities can be included in the total amount borrowed?
It's included in the amount that can be forgiven, not in the total amount borrowed. It's a little bit of a nuance there. That's why they give you 2.5 times, so that it works out to 75% of whatever you're spending money on is for payroll, 25% is for the other stuff. They're also giving you some flexibility there. If you don't bring back your entire workforce, you're going to have excess funds that are going to be available to pay for things that are rent or mortgage related. And again, if you're paying for refreshing your, go back to the restaurant example. If you're paying to buy food or beverage for your restaurant, that's not included in your PPP loan. That would, or not included in the forgivable portion of the loan. That would essentially turn into that 2-year 1% loan. So working capital needs aren't included in that.
James, can you talk to what other current insurance coverages might be available insurance-wise? Are there any?
Yeah, well, I mean, the big question is, what is business interruption insurance coverage, and does it apply to my situation? I have yet to see a policy that does not exclude pandemic types of events that we're going through. That's kind of why you saw this third stimulus package come through. It's another form of business interruption insurance, but it's not something it's filling the gap, for lack of a better term. There are some states out there, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, and I think Connecticut even jumped into the game, where they've proposed some legislation forcing insurers to pay out related to pandemics. I think that's a knee-jerk reaction. I think that's legislators that are pandering to some degree. Insurers are pretty adept at excluding things like this. Now, going forward, do I see changes in what they'll cover and what they won't cover? Probably, but it'll probably come through in some form like the federal government will back it, like flood insurance or something along those lines. This is a whole new box, a Pandora's box of things that has opened up. But I will tell you that the legal battles that are going to go on after this between the insurance companies and some of the business shutdowns that have occurred on a state-by-state basis are going to be monumental. But
that's good.
No current insurance coverages that I know of that'll help
Right.
you
Okay.
process.
So James, we kind of have two modes of operation right now for business owners. Some of them are well, maybe three modes. Some of them are completely shut down. They can't do anything.
Yep.
Some of them are operating just a little bit, and some of them are fully operational, or as well as they can be. They can be a virtual company or something like that. We've all been kind of affected different ways through this, but how can we be protecting our cash flow through this time inside of our business? Because the dollar, moves through our business, and we as business owners need to be aware of, okay, how can we make sure that we're protecting the dollar as it goes through our business? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So again, I think, you guys as business owners need to understand how your money's coming into your business, what you're doing with it while it's in your business, and how it's going out of your business. At every stage of the game, you're going to have input. You're going to have contracts with vendors. You're going to have contracts with clients. You're going to have contracts with employees. You got to revisit every part of the dollar flow through your business. Call your vendors and see, let them know what your situation is. If your receipts are down 50%, see if you can push your terms out with them. Call your lenders and see if you can get some debt, either forgiveness or get a temporary reprieve on the payments of the loans. Call your landlord and see if he or she will relieve you of rent payments, say for the next 3 months, only to maybe tack it on at the end of the year or tack it on towards the end of the term of your lease. As it relates to people that owe you money or outstanding AR, get in touch with them and get a sense for where they're at with their payment cycle. Try to get cash in the door as fast as you can, with the understanding that everybody's going to get a little pinched here. But in thinking through all of these things, it's also a good time to look at your current agreements and see and make sure that you're being protected and understanding the provisions that are in place once we get on the other side of this, so that when you do need to enforce your rights or protect yourself because somebody else is claiming that you violated their rights, the more comfortable you are with those documents and those provisions now, the better off you're going to be when we get on the other side of this. Everybody's in kind of a standstill, and we're all going to work together mode. I will tell you that when we get a week, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months out of this, the knives will start coming out.
Yeah, the economy's kind of in, you could agree or disagree with this. I'm curious to hear what you have to say, but it feels like it's in a pause mode. I know that, the stock market went down, but we as business owners, we're doing a little bit, but we're not able to do a lot. And so we don't know what's going to happen the moment it's unpaused. It could take off. It could ramp right back up. It could kind of go a little bit, or it might even tank. Would you agree with that, James?
Yep. Yeah, there's no question. I think you're going to have a mix and match of a lot of different things. All I can say is the prognosticators are probably, I'll go out on a limb and say 100% of the time their predictions are wrong, because there's too many variables and too many factors that go into play. All you can control is how your business is set, and now's not the time to go into your shell and do nothing. It's work on your business time.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something that we've talked about ongoingly over the last couple of weeks. And I think, the business right now, it's level set, and the businesses that are taking a step back to analyze their strengths and weaknesses, they're looking at their pipeline and what they thought might be a great pipeline, but maybe weeding out some of the potential clients that might not come to fruition, and just investing in resources of doing additional training or marketing. Whatever they can do that's going to feed to that after we come out of it, it's going to be the small companies that are doing those things now because it's a level playing field, and it's going to be who gets out of the gates fastest when it's go time. So those are all things that Carl and I are bringing to these Monday and Wednesday lunch sessions. So again, if you like the things that James talked about, join us in the future Monday, Wednesdays, because we're going to talk about more and more of that so that you're ready when the time is right.
Yeah, I agree. And so, James, we have one more question here that we haven't really talked about, and that is really kind of would be a great wrap-up question. And the question is, outside of the programs, the disaster assistance programs, what else should we be thinking about? And I'm going to answer what I think, and that is what Susan just said. Work on your business. All those systems and processes that haven't worked, now's the time to work on them and fix them. But also in this time is a great time to be building relationships. There's a lot of people out there that are completely open to having a conversation that normally aren't open to having a conversation. So the people that are your potential customers in the future, build a relationship. Don't try to sell them right now. That's the worst thing to do. But go out and talk to them, get to know them, ask them questions. They will talk to you. Everybody that I've talked to that does cold calling, they're getting in front of people they've never gotten in front of before. And so if you do anything, work on your business and then grow your connection, your sphere of influence right now. That would be huge. But so James, what else do you have to say about what we should be thinking about through this?
Yeah, so I think now's the time that you start checking in with your what I call your personal board of directors, and that could be your professional advisors, it could be your business coach, it could be somebody you respect in the community, and really just kind of start talking through what your thoughts are on the business currently and where you want it to be, and how are you going to get there in today's environment, or with the knowledge of what's going on today. How does your plan before what happened today, does that still match with how you're going to get there on a go forward basis? But again, now's the time to pull those documents out, pull the insurance coverages out, really look at what you're spending money on, okay? And say to yourself, is this a nice to have or is it a need to have for my business? I can tell you from my perspective, the businesses that really come out on the other end of situations like this, I've been through 9/11, I've been through the downturn, I've watched and analyzed a lot of different businesses. They're the ones that are coming out and making affiliations and relationships with even competitors. They're spending on marketing. Do not ignore the spend on marketing. You've got to make sure that you're telling your clients and the world that you serve that you are still around, and you're not here to sell them. You're here to help out where you can. And those sticky types of relationships will continue to grow on the other side of this.
Yeah, I mean, right now, that's one of the things that I'm doing a lot is helping do the business owners. I want to share this with you guys. This is really cool. We're kind of leveraging the opportunities for them, helping them maintain connection with their team and maintain their team through this time, and also making sure that they're protecting their market share. Everybody kind of reset down to the beginning right now. And so this is your opportunity to crawl ahead of your competition. A lot of people haven't seen it that way, but it is. It really is a great time to jump ahead of them. Maybe you won't procure the business right now, but you will get the business eventually. And so leverage this time the most that you can. Does anybody else have any questions? We're kind of wrapping up here. I think we've covered a lot of things, but any other final questions? Wow. Okay, we've got silence. That's good. Everybody completely understands everything now, right?
Come on,
James, I sent
5 minutes of an attorney's time asking questions.
James, I sent you an email, and I have just 2 questions in there. They're not pertaining to the coronavirus, PPP, financial assistance, and stuff like that. So would love for you to review that email. It's just 2 questions, one pertaining to my contract and the other is retainer fees.
Yep.
So if you're able to look at that at any point that you have available, that'd be fantastic.
No problem. I will check it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, and ultimately, everybody, James is one of my trusted advisors. Like, I know many of you know, like, and trust me. I would put him right in that trusted advisor with my group of peers that I connect with and know and like and trust. So you can trust him. And he's very generous too. He's not one of those guys that's watching his watch the whole time to say, okay, click. All right, that was your 12 minutes that I'm going to charge you for. I've greatly appreciated how he conducts himself as a business owner. I've known him many years now. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
Hey, James, did I understand correctly? You have to hire all your folks on the day, like when you get this loan, in order to be forgiven, right?
No, you are forgiven for the amount of payroll costs that you incur. That was also in place before February 15th. So if you get 75% of your workforce back, you're going to get 75% of whatever you applied for forgiven.
All right, but it can be back from the day when you receive the loan, right? Or
Yes.
it should be retroactively? No, from
You have until June 30th
uh-huh.
of this year to bring that payroll onto the books.
Uh-huh. And to show for 2 months that you have
2
this.
months. That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, everybody, let's wrap this up. Our next call is on Monday. Next week, we're going to be talking more about how to leverage yourself through this COVID time. And if you guys have any questions for us that you'd like us to try to get an expert on the show, or you want us to address it, we'd be happy to do that. As I said before in the beginning, this is here to serve you. This isn't about us. We're not here to try to get your business or get you on as a coaching client. That's not what it's about. We're here to just provide value. And I challenge you to take us up on that. Email us, reach out to us. We're here to be your support through this time. And even if it's just up here, you're having a tough day and you want to reach out to us and say, I'm just having a bad day. Can you help me out? We're happy to do that. James, any closing comments?
I have a closing question.
Yes.
Has this been recorded so that we can either pass it along or review it again?
Yeah, everybody, this has been recorded. It's live. Your faces are out on the internet now. I hope you liked how your hair looked. It's on Facebook Live right now. It's actually live right now. It's on our Facebook page, Higher Impact. And then also, I tagged James in it. So if you're friends with James, he's on that as well. And we are recording it to throw it up on YouTube later as well. So yes, it is.
Yeah, so Carl, you're asking for final comments here. And I'll tell you the other thing I'm monitoring is, some of the back channel conversations that are going on. And I put it in an email yesterday about, a lot of CEOs are talking through back channels to President Trump and the Trump administration and then to Congress. This has got to stop. This has got to come to an end. We all got the social distancing thing, but you're putting pressure on the engine of growth for the country. I'm seeing more articles like that on a regular basis and more commentary that way, which tells me that we're closer to the end than the beginning of this. I'm not saying that everything's going to go back to normal, but I will say that what I've seen, the majority of the program is supportive of the small business community. I was raised parent for small business owners. I'm a small business owner. You guys are the engine of growth. You guys are the biggest. Any area that you're involved with, you just never get any of the credit. So whatever I can do to help you guys out, it only serves to benefit the community as a whole. So keep positive. We'll get through this. This too shall pass, and the innovations and ideas and stick-to-itiveness of all that you're doing is what makes this country great. So keep moving forward, guys.
Okay, well, everybody, we're going to sign off. If you need anything, we're here. James threw his email address in the chat, but you can also email me or Susan, and we'll pass it on to him. And look forward to seeing you all again next time when you can join us.